Well, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for coming today to my mother, Hillel Slomnicki's celebration of life and memorial. I see lots of friends, family, members of the Edmonds Garden Club, people who work with my mom. Anybody here from her old condo? No? But how about have the family stand up for a moment? With my mom's partner, Alberto. I'm sure many of you have met him along the way. My daughters Sherry and Lauren. Sherry's kids, great grandkids of my mom, Michaela and Gavin. And you know, I have a previous life. My first wife, Karen, is the mom of the kids, and her brother, Mark, Dr. Shelley. I think some of you may have been patients of him. Some of you are. So, let's see, who's here from the Garden Club? Just raise your hand. Look at that. I know that's something she missed, but you know, even during COVID, she looked forward to the Zoom meetings and that. Kept people together. So thank you all for bringing that light into her life. And after leaving her condo, she moved to Morningstar Silver Lake Assisted Living. We have several people here. We have the executive director, Ashley Starks, is here, and several residents. So thank you all for coming from up in Everett. I have some wonderful friends. Paul Pettinger, who I grew up with. Sadly, his mom passed when he was very young, so he shared our refrigerator quite often.
Only by invitation.
Only by invitation. But that was a standing invitation. So, and I have lots of friends here, people who didn't know my mom that have come. Joe and Kathy, Dan and Madeline, Chris. So, all, thank you so much. We are going to do a bit of a service. My mom's cousin, Rabbi Hillel Cohn, has come up. He flew up this morning from California to do the service. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Cohn.
The service today is a coming together of elements from two traditions, the Catholic tradition, the Jewish tradition. And if you feel comfortable in either of those throughout the service, please feel free to join together. We begin on page 1. May the God of hope give you the fullness of peace, and may the Lord of life be always with you. Together.
And also with you.
The grace and peace of God our Father be with you.
And also with you.
May the Father of mercies, the God of all consolation, be with you.
And also with you.
Brothers and sisters, we believe that all the ties of friendship and affection which knit us as one throughout our lives do not unravel with death. Confident that God always remembers the good we have done and forgives our sins, let us pray, asking God to gather Hella to himself. Together, Lord our God, the death of our sister Hella recalls our human condition and the brevity of our lives on earth. But for those who believe in your love, death is not the end, nor does it destroy the bonds that you forge in our lives. Make Hillel worthy to share the joys of paradise. Here's our brief. Let us listen to the voice, the psalmist, words that continue to bring us the message of God's nearness, of our fellowship with God in light and in darkness, in joy and in sorrow, in life and in death. The bottom of page 2, the words of Psalm 121. Join with me, please. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from God who made heaven and earth. God will not let our footsteps slip. Our guardian never sleeps. The guardian of Israel will never slumber, never sleep. God is our guardian. God is our shade. God by our side, the sun cannot overpower us by day, nor the moon by night. God guards us from harm, guards our lives. God guards our leaving and our coming back, now and forever. For those of you from the Christian world, please join together in the words that come from the letter of Paul to the Corinthians, on top of page 3. Together. We haven't.
We know that if our earthly dwelling should be destroyed, we have a building from God, a dwelling not made with hands, eternal in heaven. So we are always courageous, although we know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. For we walk by faith, not by sight. Yet we are courageous, and we are never leave the body to go home to the Lord. Therefore, we strive to please Him, whether we are at home or away. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive the recompense according to what he did by God, whether good or evil. The word.
Now from Hebrew Scriptures. Join with me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. O God, give peace to Hillel forever. Together. Lord, bless those who mourn and are in pain. Bless Hella's family and friends who gather around her today.
Lord, have mercy.
We can join together. O Lord, O our Lord, how great is your name. How manifold are your blessings. Even in the midst of our pain and sorrow, we are mindful of your goodness to us. We're grateful for the strength to carry our burden, for friends and loved ones who are near to help. We're grateful for the promised healing to follow after we have walked through the valley of the shadow. And we are grateful for the memory of our loved ones, which death can never take from us. Help us, we pray, to be mindful always of the many blessings in our lives, for the blessings of the earth, for the yield of the land and the waters, so we may ever be among those who reverently offer gratitude to you and strive to share your blessings with all your children. There is a blending, almost a conflict of feelings and emotions that all of us, or at least most of us, have been experiencing since the last days of Hella's life and are continuing to experience since her death. Their feelings and emotions, first of hoping that her wishes that her physical life come to an end be fulfilled, and that she be spared any undue pain and discomfort. We knew that she was extremely frustrated in no longer being in charge, or let's say it as it is, in control of her life. And to be honest, control of the lives of others. And second, we've experienced and continue to experience sadness that while hers was an unusually long-lived life, it has ended. And that what we now have is a repository of memories, visual memories, but memories in our hearts and our minds. And the reality is that we can no longer converse with her, or laugh with her, or be uplifted by her great smile, and can no longer experience the many other things that marked our special relationship with Ella. As someone once wisely wrote, death, like life, is real. The loss of a loved one is real. The pain of parting from them is real. And then that person went on to write, we cannot find wholesome consolation by taking refuge in fantasy or illusion. We must accept the world, life and death as they are. Hella, the consummate realist, would want nothing less than that. The mixture and blending of feelings that marked our special relationship with Hella, that is something that was truly a mark of Hella's life. A mixture of blends of feelings and emotions. You know that she survived the most inhumane, evil attack on humanity, and especially on the community of people into which she was born, the Jewish people, the people that experienced first the deprivation of some of the basic rights of life, and then ultimately the brutal murder of so many of Hella's contemporaries, including the murder of her cousins Heinz and Werner Frischler, her Aunt Paula, her Uncle Herman, and most tragically of all, her beloved sister Ella. That Hella survived was indeed miraculous. And that in addition to her survival, there was miraculous survival of her father and mother, York and Erna, as well as her friend who would eventually become her husband, Bernard. That part of her life was blended with Hella's unwavering recognition that one could not spend the rest of their life in a survivor mode. Rather, she was unrelenting on taking on a new life, a life in a new country, with a new language, with new opportunities and new obligations. She still had dreams and ambitions that were among the marks of her life as a child and as a growing teenager. Among them was to further cultivate her love for and her ability as a gymnast. There were other hopes and plans for the future, but they were destroyed by the Nazis. While she came close to death at the hands of the Nazis, she would not let that have mastery over her life. While she may hardly have ever thought of or dreamt that she would live to almost a century, she was a true model of resiliency embracing life, of bouncing back. And she did that and did that so well right here in the Pacific Northwest in Greater Seattle, the place to which she and her dear parents, my Uncle York and Tante Erna, came. And it was here that they, but above all Hella, grasped and seized new opportunities. Hella adamantly refused to let the rest of her life be mired in bitterness and abandonment of hope. Hella's love for America, her new home, was expressed in many ways. She was a proud citizen. She was an unwavering liberal and progressive. She was one for whom liberty and justice for all was not just a lovely phrase to be part of the Pledge of Allegiance. It was the America that she became unalterably and unabashedly committed to. Facing Hella's death is, of course, most difficult for her son John and his family, for Alberto, who shared so much with Hella. While each of them and some others could share their feelings today, you'll have an opportunity to do that. I believe that her granddaughter Sherry said it so well in her recent Facebook posting. She said, among other things, Hella was the glue of our family. She was my grandma, but to many she was Oma. She was an incredible woman. She kept changing with the times. I'm among Hella's close family, for whom Hella's death has become and remains so difficult. Let me share with you some of what you know about my relationship with my first cousin, Hella Slomnicki. It happens, as I look out here, that I have known Hella longer than anyone else who is here today. I was a youngster, 9 years old, growing up in Seattle, when in 1947 my parents were able to find out that while it had been thought that York, George, Erna, Ellen, and Hella had all been among the 6 million Jews murdered by the Nazis, somehow York, Erna, and Hella survived. It's really nothing short of miraculous. While we, my parents, my sister, and myself, were rather new refugees from Nazi Germany ourselves, having been able somehow to get out of Germany in the spring of 1939, we discovered that the 3 Cohns, George, York, Erna, and Hella, had survived. And when the war ended, my uncle and aunt searched for their daughters. Here's the poster that they circulated over a vast region. Before long, they were able to connect with Hella, while at the same time facing the terrible reality that Ellen, their other daughter, had not survived. And soon the 3 of them came together in a displaced person camp in Germany. They could never settle on an acceptable answer to why all this had happened, but they did take on the task of deciding where, how, and what to do with the rest of their lives. The connection between brothers surfaced. And while there was the possibility of the 3 Cohns coming to the United States and living in New York, where one of the Cohn brothers, Richard, lived, the other possibility was them to travel cross-country to Seattle, where we lived. And it was a mutual choice, theirs and ours, that they would come to Seattle. So it was in 1947 that Hella and her parents came here. My parents welcomed them with open hearts, hands, and much more. From what I remember, They were rather impressed with the renown that my father, blessed memory, had achieved here in Seattle, where he was the rabbi of one of the major synagogues, the Herzl Conservative Congregation. He was highly regarded as one of the major leaders of the Jewish community, and I had very vivid memories of Uncle York and Tante Erna and Ella. I especially remember that young, pretty, lively Hella, who in many ways became a big sister to my own sister and myself. And before too long, Hella began pursuing her desire to be a nurse. And I have a picture, both the actual photo as well as the imagery etched in my memory of that beautiful, smiling nurse-to-be, proudly wearing the outfit that nurses wore in those days. Our families became very, very close. We were not just related as first cousins. We shared having survived the Holocaust. We shared hopes for the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine, where some of our family, including 4 or 5 of our first cousins, already lived. And we shared an appreciation for what America was, a land of the free and a home of the brave. Now, whether it was a right or not so right decision later in that year in 1947, my father, who had been a leader of Zionism first in Germany, then here in the Pacific Northwest, accepted a request that he give up the congregational rabbinate and spend all of his time and energy to help bring the Jewish state into existence. And his skills as a teacher, orator, fundraiser, and diplomat were necessary. And for some reason, taking on that position required us to move to San Francisco and either convince Uncle York and Tante Erna and Hella to join us in migrating south, or to leave them in Seattle, where they had already begun to fashion a new world for themselves. You know, they opted to stay here. And not having the communication tools that are so much a part of lives these days, the communication between our two households lessened. And eventually, for a variety of reasons, the relationship screeched to a halt as Hella and her parents seemed to feel that maybe they had been neglected or even abandoned by the Jewish community, and they found a comfortable place, a spiritual home in the Catholic community. The familial connection between our two households, which had been so deep and meaningful, ended. And during those years, Uncle York dealt with some very challenging medical concerns. Tante Erna was reunited with her sister, and Hella had moved on to her life as a medical professional, as well as her life as a wife and mother. It was only later that I share this not looking for any praise, but I was able later to reconnect with Tante Erna and Hella and brought our families, at that time my mother, sister, and I, together with Tante Erna and Hella, and our relationship resumed and brought, I can say this without hesitation, blessings to each and every one of us. Friends, there are other dimensions to the story of our connection as first cousins, but just for the record, the grandparents Hella and I shared, Opa Isidore Cohn and Oma Fanny Wiener, they had 6 children and 14 grandchildren. Hella and I were among the 14. Hella's death has brought the number of cousins alive now to 4 instead of 5. A little more than 20 years ago, I shared with Hella that I was involved in speaking about and teaching about the Shoah, the Holocaust, and asked her to share an account of her experience. And she did so in a wonderful, illuminating short essay, and at the same time entrusted to me her small collection of documents from that era, which included the yellow Star of David that Jews were forced to wear, as well as the poster that had been circulated in which George and Erna, then interred in the Häftlinge Konzentrationslager concentration camp, were seeking to find their daughters, Ellen and Hella, an effort that eventually brought York, Erna, and Hella together. Crushed by the murder of Ellen, but intent on taking whatever steps were needed to rebuild their lives. They knew that two of York's brothers had made new lives for themselves in America. And also among those documents that Helen entrusted to me was the formal certificate of her conversion to Judaism that Tante Erna received prior to her and Uncle York getting married, a certificate that attested to Hella and Ellen's being fully Jewish. Without getting into the numerous details that Hella's essay contained, let me share just a few in Hella's own words. My sister and I were forced to leave our school of choice and enrolled into a Jewish school located in Aner in Breslau. That school was closed due to many of the students having already been taken to concentration camps. I transferred to the Rediger Real Gymnasium, also a Jewish school. In September 1941, Hella was 15 years old then, I was forced to quit my education to start slave labor. My first job was at a uniform factory, and I was making uniforms and gloves for the German army. I cannot recall the exact dates, but I was later transferred to work for the magistrate of Breslau, working at the city garbage dump. There my work consisted of sorting garbage without gloves for protection. And after a while, I was again moved to another job, repairing shoes for the army. She continues, on July 20th, 1944. My sister and I were picked up from our home by the Gestapo, transported to Kurzbach. And there she was now 18 years old, there we were digging ditches for the army. And while we were at that camp, the Russians were coming closer, and the Gestapo wanted to move us to another camp. There was a lot of chaos in the streets. Many of the Germans were fleeing on foot or wagons or cars. Because of all this confusion, my sister, another friend of ours, and I took the opportunity to mix between the Germans to escape. We found a convent where the nuns, the sisters, took us in and were hiding us overnight. The Nazis were looking for escaped prisoners, came to the convent, interrogated the nuns. Because we did not want them to be harmed, we left the convent during the next night and made our way back to Breslau, hoping that we would find our parents and all go into hiding. That was a big mistake, because when we got there, the Gestapo was already waiting for us. And we were immediately taken to Ruhenthal concentration camp. Hella continues that this didn't last long. Eventually, they were moved to Mauthausen and were then told they were being moved to Bergen-Belsen. The long train was filled with Hungarian Jews. Ellen, Hella, and their friend Susan were the only German Jews on the train. And while the train was moving to Bergen-Belsen, there was heavy bombing. There's more to the story, but it ends with the three young girls climbing over trains to gain freedom, running and being shot at. A commander seemed to have some desire to help them, called for an ambulance, that then transported them to a hospital. Ellen and Susan were taken to surgery. Susan had lost so much blood that she did not survive. Ellen lived 2 days and died on March 5th, 1945. Helen survived. I've shared this with you because it's an account, not a story, but an actual chronicle of what Helen experienced. And I will forever be indebted to Helen for sharing this chronicle with me, and I share it with you today because I know that my dear, sweet, smiling, loving cousin would want it no other way. She was totally committed to never again. I've tried to be most respectful of whatever decisions Helen and her parents made regarding their religious identity. They seem to have found comfort in the church. Such comfort was surely available in the Jewish community, but they were entitled to make decisions that while it took them on a different path than other survivors, it made sense to them. What I can say is that Helen continued to treasure her Jewish heritage. She enjoyed our ceremonies, our music, our traditions, our foods. Along with her parents, she may have embraced Catholicism, but she never severed her ties with the Jewish people. If anything, those ties became a more important part of her life as the years advanced. And hopefully, I fashioned today's service to respect and express that. It should be abundantly clear to anyone who knew Helen that she was so proud of John, her grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And sometimes that pride led her to do what John and others felt was control over them. But they also knew that she loved them. Helen was proud of her accomplishments in nursing and medical education. Helen's love and friendship with Alberto brought many blessings to each of them. And I know that my dear cousin Helen was and will forever remain precious to me, to my sister, and to other members of our family. So let me conclude with some words that appear in a prayer book of a Jewish community in Great Britain. We live in deeds, not years, in thoughts, not breaths, in feelings, not figures on a dial. We should count time by heartthrobs. He or she most lives who thinks most, feels the noblest, and acts the best. That's how we can and should think of Helen. She lived a long life, yes. She lived a miraculous life, yes. She lived a life in which she blessed others. And now her memory can and will bless us all. On page 5, you'll find words of a modern poet, perhaps expressing so well what Helen would have us think of. Don't remember me with sadness, don't remember me with tears. Remember all the laughter we've shared throughout the years. Now I am contented that my life, it was worthwhile, knowing that I passed along the way, I made somebody smile. When you were walking down the street and you got me on your mind, I'm walking in your footsteps, only half a step behind. So please don't be unhappy just because I'm out of sight. Remember that I'm with you each morning, noon, and night. With that, let me invite you in the Christian community to turn to page 6, to join The Lord's Prayer. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
let me now invite you to turn to page 7 and 8. The words that we call the mourner's cottage, words that don't talk about death, but talk about life. They were words important to Helen and her family, and still remain important. If you're able, I would ask you to rise as we can join in reciting these words, those who are comfortable in doing so, the words of the mourner's cottage. Yit gadal v'yit kadash v'rabal. Alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chaye chol v'yomechon v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehesh me rabam v'barach le'olam lo'amei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei. Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekut shabrichu. Eila min kol birchata v'shirata. V'shbachata v'nechamata. Tamiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehesh lama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. Imru amen. Oseh shalom b'rama. Yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael. Imru amen. We pardon Hillel Slomnicki, who's entered into the peace of eternal life, will still live here on earth in the acts of goodness she performed in the hearts of all of us who cherish her memory. May the beauty of her life ever abide among us as a living and loving benediction. And so on page 8, bottom of the page, let us join together, everyone. We have joined in prayer today, honoring the departed and seeking to comfort the living. By sharing some measure of their sorrow, we've reminded them that they are not alone. And God is everywhere, be with them in their grief. Guide them to the valley of the shadow, the open meadows of sunshine and healing. This source of all comfort and healing mercifully sustain those who mourn. Console the bereaved among us. May God grant strength to all people. May God bless us with comfort and with peace. Let us say. Be seated. I think, John, if we could, anyone would like to express some short thoughts. I'm not the one that can tell you that they have to be short.
Anybody have anything you'd like to say? Raise your hand. We'll pass you the mic.
Here I represent the Jewish Manic Service. Hannah, as a Holocaust survivor, was our client for the last 5 years of her life. I was her case manager. Every client is special, but Hannah was my very, very special client. She was a joy to work with, and probably everybody who knew her can confirm. She was the most positive person I've ever met, despite her horrific experiences. And she was so positive, and I would ask her, like, Hella, how come? Like, where did you find the strength to be so positive? And she was so grateful that she survived. She was so grateful to God that she lived with that joy. Like, because her surviving was not like remembering only the pain, but it was the joy to be alive. And I don't remember the whole quote, but I was also keep asking her further later, like, what is your secret? How are you doing it? And she basically let me know, like, you have to resist, you have to keep kicking, or it's curtains. Her own words. I had the privilege to visit Hannah about a month ago. whatever she wanted to talk. It's difficult to visit somebody who is on their last days. I can tell you that she was thinking of her beloved sister. She shared that with me. She just said she was killed. And she had some regrets, she wasn't like a just perfect, positive person. She had her own things. She let me know. I was surprised. Never before she shared anything, but she was this wonderful, real human being who had full spectrum of feelings in her life. Pain, joy, sorrow, triumphs. She loved her family, she loved the country, and she was a blessing. My supervisor also asked me to pass to the family condolences and to say that it's a big loss not only for the community but for all our team and for family, for the team, for the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? So Hillel had mentioned, oh, okay, yours. Okay.
Speak right.
I'm Karen, Hella's daughter-in-law, and I want to tell you a family secret. As many of you know, Hella loved to entertain and was never disappointing when it came to food. It was 7 years before I was trusted with this family secret. What am I talking about? Potato salad.
I was hoping it was cheesecake. Cheesecake.
The secret ingredients was apple. Not any old apple, but a golden delicious. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Because I hope that when you serve it, that you will receive the compliments that Hella did. Think of her and keep the recipe alive in her memory. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you're coming up.
Yeah.
I must tell you that one of my memories is Tante Erna, my aunt, got me hooked on whipped cream. Yeah.
That's actually a great segue to what I can share about Oma. I'm Sherry, the granddaughter, and as everybody knows, Oma's cooking was impeccable. And one of the highlights of growing up as a granddaughter when Oma was cooking is you lick the beaters after she makes whipped cream. And one time I remember licking the beaters just like I had so many times in the past. And my sister and I are looking at each other going, this is so weird, this is not right, it doesn't taste good. But nobody dares say anything because Oma's cooking is fantastic and never has there ever been a critique. So we're both like, I don't know, Oma, this doesn't taste so good. I'm not sure what happened. So she takes a spoonful of it and tries it. And, well, heck, she put cornstarch in instead of sugar. Other than that, I think for me, I'm going to remember the things that growing up I would roll my eyes or dread about Oma are going to be the things that I miss the most now. I'd come home
home shortly after my parents split, and Oma would be there frequently, filling in to help cook and do laundry and clean, and I would purposely clean and vacuum the house as best as I could the day before I knew she was coming, trying to prove that we didn't need her. We obviously did, because there was a lot more than just vacuuming the house that I had no clue that needed to be done that she would help out with. And then another word that we grew to hate was the word elegant. My sister and I growing up, you know, when you're young, you want to look cute, or when you're older and you want to look hot, the last thing you wanted was your grandma telling you how elegant you looked. So we would cringe whenever we heard that word. Well, Oma, I hope you're looking down today. I hope you look elegant. Thank you.
Anybody else? So one thing Rabbi Cohn talked about was after my mom and her sister Ellen died, she was at a hospital. She remained at that hospital and was hidden by the nuns. That's where she got her introduction into nursing. She learned to take care of the war wounded. She saw, well, you can imagine the injuries people sustained during bombing. You know, there were people who were shot. There were people subject from trauma of explosions and burns. You know, and then once the war was over, she went back to, was in the resettlement camp. It was her father that had met my father Bernard there and had introduced them. And that's where their relationship started, was in the resettlement camps. Not a very great place, but at least it was among friends and some family. But that experience in the hospital there in Germany, while she was being hidden, gave her a huge step up when she came here to Seattle. You saw pictures of her in a nurse's uniform. That was at Providence Hospital in Seattle, up on Capitol Hill, or up on First Hill, where she was a student nurse and actually ended up getting her license. And she worked at Providence Hospital as a nurse for a number of years. She had a great charge nurse there who loved her. That charge nurse left, went to another hospital nearby called Group Health. Group Health was just getting started, only was a few years old at that point. They were looking to be certified. Well, my mom was recruited from Providence to come work at Group Health. And she remained there at Providence working in emergency and medical surgical floors up until the time I was born. I was born there at Group Health up on Capitol Hill. About that time, we were living in the Northgate area. Definitely doesn't look like what it does now. That was long before there was any freeways in the 50s, 60s. Who here remembers the Seattle Rainiers, the baseball club down at 6th Stadium? Who's heard of the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center? Maybe you're okay. Well, we have a little story there. So, again, my mom was looking for some part-time work. She left Group Health. She was raising me. There was an opening for a nurse to work for the Rainier Ball Club at 6th Stadium. And she ended up getting that job. And her boss, the supervising physician for the team, was William Hutchinson, Dr. William Hutchinson, brother to Fred Hutchinson. And when he first met my mom, he asked, well, what do you know about baseball? Well, coming from Germany, she knew absolutely nothing. Well, when there weren't any calls for first aid or anything like that, her place was in a box seat right behind home plate. And there's a wonderful Seattle police officer who took the time then to teach her about baseball. His name was Pat Murphy, later became a lieutenant and had a homicide there. But, they were longtime friends, and he taught her about baseball. And back to Dr. Hutchinson, as you know, he introduced her to Fred Hutchinson, his brother, who was a pitcher on the team, who later went on to pro ball. But sadly, he passed due to cancer early in his career. And that's where the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center name comes from. So, kind of just a little segue from my mom's experience. So back to taking care of me for years, she decided I need to do something. So back up to Capitol Hill, but this time not to a hospital, but to the Edison Technical School. Many of you know where Seattle Community College is up on Broadway. If you look at the south end of campus, there's an old brick building. That was the Edison Technical College, or Technical School. And there, she learned more medical terminology, things about medical administration. Her professor there was a lady by the name of Mrs. Montgomery. Mrs. Montgomery was also the manager or director of medical records for the University of Washington Hospital. Again, my mom, Hillel, was recruited and brought in to work in room BB 306 at the University Hospital, working with medical records. She did a number of jobs there over her career. And I believe Mrs. Montgomery's the person who took her job, Ingrid Benson, she's here. Ingrid, can you raise your hand?
And I remember Helen bringing in a very little Johnny after school. And he came in the department, he became one of the ladies. Yeah.
So if you didn't hear Ingrid, what she was mentioning, probably when I was 12 years old, in junior high. You've all heard of candy stripers, the volunteers in the hospitals. Well, most hospitals never had a guy volunteer. But at university, they said, okay, we've got the paperwork for the candy strippers, we'll just modify a little and change it, and they approved it, and I was able to actually go in and volunteer. And I'll tell you, the education I got as a kid at University Hospital was incredible. You know, the office skills, being able to be trusted by people like Ingrid and the management there to work with people's files, you know, the actual medical records. You could read them, and it was just, to me, fascinating to read about surgeries and, you know, all these different things. And back then, just a photocopier, changing the toner on a Xerox, that was a process. A lot of the older charts were on microfilm and had to be, if you needed them, you had to reprint them. Those are things I did, pulling charts for studies. It was a great opportunity I was given at University Hospital thanks to my mom. She made sure, if I wanted to do scouting, I was able to do scouting. There was really nothing I had ever wanted for. And she always found some way to make it happen. So, quite an amazing life. She retired early after Karen and I separated, as Sherry had said. She came to help out a lot. I worked swing shift for the county, for King County. So a lot of times, the kids would come home and I would have snacks waiting for them or something like that. And my mom would feed them. Always had a rotating shift, so I never knew. That was really quite a bit of help. And getting the kids to soccer. Sherry and Lauren had a wonderful opportunity to be in the Snohomish soccer, youth soccer. And Karen was a big part of that earlier in their lives. I can go on and on. But anybody else?
I'll say something.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Get a little closer.
My name is Betty, and I know Hella from the Garden Club and also from playing mahjong with her. I haven't known her very long, but she was always one of my favorite people. She was always so happy, joyful, and just infectious, and I loved being around her. And she always put the old people stereotype to shame, she was so smart. And she'd be on her phone, just whipping around, zipping and texting and sending photos, and showed me how to do a few things on there. But I loved her sense of humor too. The thing I remember most is one time at mahjong, she kept talking about Alberto this and Alberto that and Alberto this, and I'm like, well, who's Alberto? Is that your son? And she looks at me and she says, girl, that's my boyfriend. I just thought that was so cool. So I really do miss her, and I know her presence on earth here will be missed by a lot of people. So
Exactly. All right, again, all of you, thank you so much for coming. I love seeing everyone here. Please take advantage of the refreshments back here and talk to each other about, what my mom meant to you. Again, thank you.